What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Roddy Reviews. My name is Ella, and this
is the best boy in the whole wide world.
Today is the first video in what I imagine is going to be a long series as I attempt to read the entirety of my backlog books. This is quite an undertaking because I am so guilty, as I'm sure many of us are, of buying books before I've read the books I have, and so no more, I say. I'm going to get this done, and hopefully these videos will help me be held accountable in this. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Fault in Our Stars. Ella, that book has been out forever. It might even been out for a million years. Why review it now? What are you thinking?
The answer, I know this book came out a million years ago. I bought it a million years ago and set it on my shelf and never picked it up. And because I'm reading it, I have to review it. It's a compulsion I have. I don't know what to tell you. I can't imagine you don't know this, but here we go. Fault in Our Stars is about Hazel Grace, a 16-year-old girl suffering from a certain terminal lung cancer. While in a cancer support group, she meets a boy, Augustus Waters, an above-the-knee amputee who suffered from bone cancer but is now in remission. From the sounds of it, Augustus has a smoking hot bod that gets Hazel's attention immediately. Both have a quirky sense of humor and an outlook on life that is unique to those of us who have had to face our own mortality early on in life. This is a coming-of-age story, but unique in that we are not ever really certain if Hazel is actually going to come of age because of the gravity of her illness. So, first impressions. I knew going into this book that it was a sad book. I had never seen the movie, and it's been so long in the past that even as I was picking this up, I couldn't remember any of the spoilers that I had heard years ago. And so all I remembered was that it was sad. Also, generally speaking, I am not usually the biggest fan of YA novels. And because I'm not the biggest fan of YA novels, I don't think I had very high expectations going into this book. I kind of was not super looking forward to even reading it, if I'm being totally honest. But things started to turn around for me a little bit, because within the first 3 pages, the book had me literally laugh out loud, which no one was more surprised than I was, so I really enjoyed it. So last impressions. When I closed the book, the feelings that I were left with, one, the book was very funny. It did have me smiling. It did have me chuckling a little bit at parts. So that was enjoyable. It was heartwarming. It was saddening. I mean, there was a depth to this novel that I was not expecting. I left feeling good about the book. So those impressions kind of lead me into my pros and cons of the book. I would say that this book is, as odd as this might seem for it to be a pro, it was tragic in so many ways. And so for me, especially if I'm reading a book that is focused on, or at least has a big part of the book is about a relationship, is about romance, for me, I tend to really enjoy the ones that are sad. I teared up a little bit at the thought of what these kids were going through. It really touched me in a way I was honestly not expecting. Another pro, it tackled disease and illness in a way that made me think about it. That made me really reconsider, how do I treat people who are dealing with terminal illnesses or serious illnesses? How do I speak to them? What is my mentality towards them? How are they perceiving me? I mean, I was not expecting this book to make me consider those things about people that are in my community. I guess the last pro and it really, I don't know if it's a pro, but it just was a thought maybe that I was on repeat in my mind this whole time of how sad this was, I mean, honestly, it is a coming of age YA book for a girl that is not going to come of age. I mean, it was rooted in sadness, and so I was impressed. I was impressed at the depth of emotion. Again, I think I've said that several times, but I really was impressed by the depth of emotion that John Green was able to convey in this novel with teenagers. So cons. I would say that now the pros far outweighed the cons for me in this book. One, that you just can't convince me that teenagers really talk this way. And teenagers are, and just from my own youth, I think they are, they absolutely can have great insight, and they absolutely can have wisdom beyond their years. But this, I'm just saying I would be surprised. Maybe you know them. I just don't know them. The other con that I have is the con that I always have whenever I'm reading a YA novel. I think that the tone of a young adult book feels very abrasive to me. Generally speaking, YA novels are very present tense, right? Very action oriented. It's not generally super lyrical. It doesn't necessarily flow that some of maybe more adult literature can do. And so not all adult literature, but some. And so at times for me, YA can feel like it's doing this to me. It feels like it's a bit of a grind. Not always bad, not always a bad thing. It's just not my preferred voice in a book. And so that can make it difficult for me to really get into YA novels. I gave this book 4 stars. Its ability to really pull an emotional response for me really compensated for the irritation, honestly, that I can sometimes feel when I'm reading YA books. So 4 stars, 10, and 4 stars and 10 points to John Green for putting together a great book. So this is where things get a little interesting, because I have these questions that come up in my mind, and sometimes I can feel crazy because I don't have anyone to talk to about it. The reason that you might see a spoiler icon or you might see a timestamp here is because this section of my videos might at times have spoilers for the book. Now, Fault in Our Stars has been far enough in the past that I'm sure most of you have read it. And so if you have, feel free to continue listening as I go through these discussion questions. If you have not read it, please move forward to this timestamp. I don't want to ruin the book for you. That's kind of my warning. Move on ahead, or I don't know what else to tell you. For everyone that's sticking around, I want to hear your thoughts. If you're interested in these discussion questions, if you're interested in talking to me about them, I would love it if you could DM me your responses at my Instagram, at RowdyReviews33. I would love to hear it. DM me, because I don't want to ruin it for others. So give me a follow over there, and I hope to hear from you. First question that I have. A big motivation for Hazel in the first part of the novel was her desire to meet up with her favorite author, Peter Van Houten. In part because of the abrupt ending of her favorite novel of his. She is determined to find out what happened to the supporting characters in that novel, in part because she wonders, I think in part because subconsciously she wonders about what are going to happen to the supporting characters, the supporting relationships that she has in her own life. Though not as abrupt as ending in the middle of a sentence, Hazel's story seems to come to a fairly abrupt end as well. So my question for you is the same question that Hazel has for Van Houten. What do you think happens to her at the end of this book? What happens to her parents? What happens to her friends? And the next discussion question I have start with a quote from Augustus Waters. Almost everyone is obsessed with leaving a mark on the world. But Van Houten, the marks humans leave are too often scars. And he goes on to describe how Hazel has mastered the art of treading lightly in this world. And that because of her desire to do no harm, she is the true heroic one. Do you agree or disagree with Augustus's conclusions about how humans leave their mark? Why or why not? I'm really interested. That quote really gave me pause. Please be respectful of everyone who is participating in these videos. If anything that you say has a spoiler in it, please don't leave it in the comment section. DM me directly. And that's all for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. I would love to see you in my next video as I struggle to complete my book backlog. Me and my sweet little Roddy look forward to seeing you in the future. See you later.